God, I just have no idea what to do a video on this week. Wonder if the comments have any suggestions. What about if they played Commander? Yusei playing his Grease Fang Commander deck, he'll be playing a Mr. House President and CEO Commander deck. We all know the best waifu of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Mana Rebecca. No! My Yugi Dark Magician themed Commander deck, Kaiba the Ur-Dragon, Yugi Naban the Veneration, Joey Pegasus would obviously play a Silver Border Unhinged deck.
Wait a second. I just had an idea.
Hey guys, Curious6 here with the Kaladesh Express, your #1 source for Universes Beyond, and today we're going to talk about the Commander decks that Yugi and Friends would play if they played Magic the Gathering. I did a video like this not too long ago talking about what each character's modern deck would be, but as seen in my comments of that video, people really want to see the Commander decks that would play, and I very much understand. Commander is the more popular format for Magic the Gathering right now, and honestly I've been playing a lot of Commander myself, so this has been very fun to think about and dig into while I've been making new Commander decks. So for this video we're only going to talk about characters from Yu-Gi-Oh! The original series and GX, the one with the school. I only really know the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And GX, so we're going to focus on those characters for now, maybe a follow-up in the future. Other rules for this video: Commander for each deck must represent the boss monster from the normal boss monster that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Character would have, so I can't just pick any given like fairy for the Dark Magician. It has to still be like a spellcaster, wizard, something to that effect for it to be a viable commander. The commander must also be from a WotC property, so it can't be from Street Fighter or whatever. It has to be either D&D or Magic the Gathering character. I don't want to cross over the IPs too much. We're already crossing over a lot. And the one soft rule I'm going to put down also is that banned cards are going to be okay for Pegasus, because I think we all know that he needs a very specific archetype of cards or set of cards in his deck that are not normally allowed in Commander, but it would be a complete miss to not let him have those cards. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just hang on, it's going to be hilarious for you. So for all the deck lists I pulled for each of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters, I went to YGOProDeck.com to find decks based on whatever era I was looking for, and that site is super helpful. If you are interested in looking at some of the decks that I based these Commander decks off, definitely check that website out. And with all that being said, if you like the video or you like videos like this, go ahead and like and subscribe, and let's just jump into it. The Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl, Summon Skull, Buster Blader, and Slifer the Sky Dragon. So many iconic, memorable monsters, and so few of them have anything to do with each other, except that they are all iconic legendary monsters we know and love. The other defining feature of Yugi's Battle City deck is that he plays a lot more spell and trap cards than the average deck as far as I can tell. With all that being said, I think Yugi's commander would be Joda the Unifier, as it lets him cheat out iconic monsters as he is known to do. Shout out to Mechanophiliac in the comments for the suggestion. I'm taking it on a slightly different angle by focusing on a sub-theme of spell slinging. So Dark Magician is Joda, clearly as the enabler for the rest of iconic monsters. I have Kess Dissonant Mage as Dark Magician Girl, and Spore Frog as Karibo. I choose Balefire Dragon as Slifer for a couple reasons. The first is his ability to wipe an opponent's board feels very Slifer, and the second is that he's not legendary, making it harder for Yugi to cast, which, you know, it was hard for Yugi to cast originally. I'm also running Ulamog as a secondary stand-in, of course, because the Eldrazi Titans are the closest thing we have to God cards. As far as Summon Skull and Buster Blader, I think Hogak is a pretty good analog for Summon Skull. I know Lord of the Pit would be more apt, but it's not legendary and it's honestly a pretty bad card, but run it if it feels thematically resonant to you. As far as Buster Blader goes, I have two options. I like to look at his ability and his type line. If I were to focus on his ability, I would play Baneslayer Angel, but I think his Warrior type line yields more fitting results. For that, I put a card like Grand Warlord Rada, as Rada is more of his vibe, and it's actually sort of useful as they provide a positive mana like ability, and it's legendary. Otherwise, just pack your deck with cool spells, and I think you have a Yugi Commander deck. I saw a few comments about how Joey really liked rolling dice and had to get lucky to ever win a game, and while I don't disagree with that notion, I think it would be better to focus on his deck when he was at his strongest and most consistent. Luckily, I've decided to focus on Battle City for the first arc of Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Joey's deck was actually pretty easy to figure out. Looking at his deck from that time, shout out again to Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, a Wario deck is going to be the absolute best deck for him, and since Wario seems to be the only connecting thread in his 4th rate deck, I think he'd play Zurgo Helm Smasher. I think that's a decent stand-in for Flame Swordsman when we equip Zurgo with Sword of Fire and Ice. We also run a suite of generic warriors for him, and now all we need is a stand-in for Baby Dragon, Time Wizard, Jinzo, and of course some dice rolling. For Baby Dragon, we'll start with Smoldering Egg. Plargon to start will stand in for Time Wizard, and Jinzo's Stacks effect can be replicated by Douthie Voidwalker. For our graceful dice, we have Berserker's Frenzy. And that all together, I think you get the basis of a really cool Joey Commander deck.
Cause I figure, if there is intelligent life out there, then let's teach them how to duel.
Seto Kaiba is a man known for playing 3 cards: the Blue Eyes White Dragon, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and of course the Blue Eyes White Dragon. There are no dragons that can just duplicate themselves like that, or you can have that many more copies of, but there is a dragon that makes duplicates of other dragons, and that is Miriam. Miriam is from Adventures of Forgotten Realms, which I'm pretty sure one day WotC will say exists in the same universe as Magic the Gathering, if they haven't already. And it is a WotC property that was part of standard rotation, so I'm gonna count it. Anyway, Miriam will allow Kaiba to take one of the many dragons in the deck and make more of them, a thing he just loves to do. Add some clone type effects and Kaiba will have all the dragons he can handle. This one is short and sweet, but Kaiba would play a pretty generic dragon typal deck, and with the addition of his Egyptian god card stand-in Kozilek, I think this will fit him pretty well. Hey, it's the reason I had to let ban cards be legal. Yes, Pegasus will be running an unhinged deck, and the commander will be a Sika, god of the tree, which really lets him use the Prismatic Bridge as a commander. I think the bridge is a good stand-in for Toon World, which would effectively be his boss monster. Being able to use the bridge to pop out different wacky cards from his deck and having access to all 5 colors will give him an advantage he needs. He'll also be playing cards like Telepathy, Sorcerer's Spyglass, and Spy Network to represent his Millennium Eye. Pegasus is the only character who gets to break the rules, since he did not actually show up in Battle City, but I feel like he would all destroy me if I didn't mention him. I wanted to keep Bakura in the Esper color identity. I really feel like that's just who he is. But I saw a comment that reminded me Bakura is really into D&D, and luckily we have an Esper commander that's focused on diving into dungeons and graveyard manipulation, and that's Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways. This absolutely represents Bakura's love of tabletop RPGs, while still focusing on that Esper color identity, and the fact that Sephiroth also just has an reanimation ability stapled to them means his affinity to zombies and the undead is represented. Absolute knockout. Shouts out to the people who mentioned this one. And that is the end of the original Yu-Gi-Oh section of this video. Now before I get into the GX section, I do want to say, I was planning on doing a 5D section of this video. However, as I was starting to look at the characters, I remembered I did not know a lot of 5Ds anymore. Yeah, I don't feel qualified to talk about 5Ds, but my friend Jmar Game Design is a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan, so he's going to explain Yusei Fudo for you real quick.
Hey guys, this is Josh from Jmar Game Design, and I'm taking over for Mr. Kaladesh Express to give you all a quick overview of the main man of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, Yusei Fudo. Without getting too deep into the massive iceberg that is the plot of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, all you need to know about Yusei is that he was orphaned as a baby, grew up in the slums of the futuristic Neo-Domino City, well, futuristic for 2007 standards, and befriends a motley crew of boys that together made the cast of the anime version of Stand By Me. After a torrid history of gang violence and run-ins with the law, Yusei gets into tech to try and get out of the slums, only to have his former friend Jack Atlas not only steal his bike, but also steal his most precious Yu-Gi-Oh! Trademark trading card, Stardust Dragon. And it's this Stardust Dragon and the other litany of introduced synchro monsters that form the top end of Yusei's deck. 5Ds was the introduction of synchro monsters, and as a whole, the strategies to get them out acted as the sort of protoform for the combo-centric gameplay Yu-Gi-Oh! Would become known for and notorious for in the modern day. Yusei's deck, however, is not the framework one should go off of for that. The ratios are a mess. He runs so many situational cards. I mean, his deck is built out of literal junk. That's not an over-exaggeration though. One of his main monsters is literally called Junk Warrior, and the common reoccurring aesthetic theme of his deck is scrap metal and low-level tech. In line with his own philosophy about the bonds of friendship trumping all, the main monsters of his deck are, on their own, weak, feeble, low-statted, no-bread-winning nerds. But once they come together through synchro summoning, they're much more than the sum of their parts. Yusei's extra deck is, much like in the TCG, a toolbox to call upon for almost any situation. Stardust in its various forms protect the board by preventing destruction or negating effects. Junk Synchron gets a veritable Digimon evolution tree for almost any situation. Warrior for power, Archer to temporarily remove threats, Berserker for damage, Destroyer for removal, Gardna for protection, the list goes on. And despite the lack of inherent strength of his monsters, Yusei is no slouch. He's regarded as one of the most intelligent duelists in the show, and across every Yu-Gi-Oh series, he's the protag with the best record, 52-1, and the only protag to never draw a game. As an example of his sheer dueling prowess, when he's thrown in prison near the start of the series and has his main deck confiscated, he's forced to make a literal 40-card pile, wins versus the Warden with this pile of crap, and manages to break out of prison with it. He's just built different, guys. And with that, I'll toss the mic back over to Mr. Express for how Yusei would jam this sort of strategy in Magic.
Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate you coming through for me, buddy. Yeah, so I didn't know much about Yusei Fudo, but now I can make a deck that's going to wow and shock all of you, I'm sure. It's grease fitting. Please go sub to Jmar Game Design. He makes fantastic videos on Magic with a really cool animatic style that I dig, and I think you'll enjoy too. But yeah, let's talk about Yusei Fudo's deck. Greasefang is a commander that I've held near and dear to my heart for years, and I am delighted to finally find a context to bring her up on my channel. After listening to Josh's lovely explanation, I now know that it wouldn't be the motorcycle being the only connecting thread for this commander to her player, Yusei Fudo. Greasefang's ability to recur cards from the graveyard and reuse them is a perfect way to represent Yusei's use of junk as a win condition. And we can look at crewing to activate the vehicles as a stand-in for synchro summoning. For our Stardust Dragon stand-in, we have Greasefang's favorite partner, Parhelion 2, and we can throw a suite of awesome vehicles in the bin using Black's versatile graveyard manipulation. We can then represent Stardust Dragon's protection abilities with White's bevy of protection spells. Also, Greasefang rides a motorcycle and so does Yusei. GG easy. Alright, with the 1/5Ds character I'll be covering done, let's get back to the main video and talk about the GX characters now. Jade and Yuki is known for his Elemental Hero deck and Fusion. Now we don't have Fusion in Magic the Gathering per se, but we do have Meld, the idea of having two permanent cards work together as one, and we have the mechanic Craft from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I've looked through every card with both of these mechanics, and honestly I don't think a Meld deck would work super well or a Craft deck, but a superhero deck is very viable for him. And as Magic the Gathering has its own in-universe superhero team, the Gatewatch, I think that's what we'll be using. So for Jade and Yuki, I gave him a 4-color Super Friends deck with the Gatewatch being a focus. As far as his boss monster goes, like Elemental Hero Neos is his boss monster, however, he really kind of switches boss monsters throughout the series many times, and his focus is really just the Elemental Heroes, or the Neospatians, or whatever team. He's an archetype kind of guy, not a boss monster kind of guy, but he is possessed by the spirit of an evil entity called Yubel, and Atrax and Yubel look very similar, so I'm going to use Atrax as the commander. This also helps the Super Friends theme and helps them get more powerful more quickly, which is something Jaden would be into.
Not so fast. I activate the attack.
Cyber Dragons. Honestly, have you heard a cooler combination of words? When I first added Zane's name to the list, I thought, okay, Worms, because I want to play Wormcoil Engine. But then I looked at EDH Rex page for decks that use Wormcoil Engine, and there really aren't any like good ones that fit this aesthetic. So I was then left with the obvious option, and let me tell you, I looked really hard for a more fun commander, but in the end, Ramos Dragon Engine was the guy. We're still going to play Wormcoil Engine, but we're also going to play all the prototype cards from Brothers War. I think this is going to be an artifact-themed typal deck, where we're going to focus on getting out as many small artifacts in every game as we can, and then pay the full cost for some of the cool prototypes later. That kind of does the Cyber Dragon thing of, you know, using it, upgrading, so I think that's a pretty good deck for Zane.
His heart has already stopped once.
Let's keep this one short and sweet. Dr. Velian Crowler played the Ancient Gear archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! This was made of a bunch of mechanical soldiers who worked together to create bigger mechanical soldiers. There's an argument that he probably should have had the Brothers War prototype cards. However, I think that Thopters, Mir, and other artifact creatures that work together for one larger whole more fit him. And once you see Urza's Battle Thopter, I think you'll agree that that just screams Crowler and there's no better commander for him.
Time to get chased. Hold that.
The Armed Dragons and Ojamas. I didn't really know exactly what to do for Chaz here, as the combination of the creatures in his deck are so distinctly different from one another that I struggled to find two creature types that have very little to do with each other, that were sort of like Armed Dragons and Ojamas, that actually might work together properly. I almost cut them from the list. Then I remembered that Rith the Awakener exists. A dragon? Check. A bunch of small ineffectual dudes that come together to become a threat? Check. Weird? Check. I think this is the perfect commander for Chaz. We're also going to fill this deck with a bunch of other dragon payoffs and treat the saplings like goblins are usually treated in a deck like this, fodder. But we'll also have a sapling payoff to give them a secondary use in the deck. The Ojamas are such an interesting design space that I really wanted to focus on them for this video. However, I think Rith will be much more of a functional deck than some cute meme deck.
Shall we settle this once and for all, Jaden?
And for our last commander player, we have Jaden Yuki's evil inner demon, Yubel. This was another tricky one. In her final duel against Jade in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Yubel uses a plant deck, but we already kind of did plants with Chaz. And I think her more memorable deck was her Sacred Beast deck, so we'll look at that one. Mael the Anima cheats out giant creatures, which was all Yubel was trying to do with her strategy, and at first she would cheat out small creatures and then sacrifice them to bring out her big boys. As far as the big things she'll cheat out that are kind of like Sacred Beast, we have stuff like Craterhood Behemoth, obviously, but we also have Kogla and Yodaro and other Ikoria monsters, and things like the Vaultborn Tyrant. So I think that makes a pretty decent bell deck. Appreciate you guys watching. That's the end of the Commander Yu-Gi-Oh video I'm working on. If there's other videos like this you'd like to see in the future, please let me know. I am more than willing to tackling subjects like this, and I'm always looking for new cool ideas. But yeah, sorry this one's a little late. I'm getting married soon, so it's just taking up a lot of time and energy, honestly. And I want to, make sure I put the best quality stuff out for you guys, so I didn't want to rush this out. And thanks again to Jmar Game Design. Super helpful. I didn't know anything about 5Ds, but I really wanted to throw something 5Ds in this video. Thanks again, bro. Go subscribe to Jmar Game Designs. Awesome guy. And like and subscribe this video if you want to see more things like this. I will definitely be putting out more, just at a little bit of a slower rate for the next little while I get ready for this big life-changing event. But otherwise, thank you so much and have a great day, guys. See ya.